let's get right back into part 4 of Changeling. Alrighty. For chapter 8, Night at the Club Room. So is that where we're going to stay then? Because right now we've got somebody doppelganging as me to try to figure out what's going on at home. Ewan and I arrived at the club room alone. So it's the 25th still, huh? I think that was where we left off. Allie stopped on the way to get something to eat since I hadn't had lunch. Neither had she, since she'd been running around preparing for Operation Fake Nora or whatever. The club was empty. Not surprising, since everyone else probably still in class. School was about to end, so presumably they'd be showing up soon too. Feels sort of weird arriving like this, to the courtyard in the middle of the day. At this point, it's going to be better if you just get used to the weird. Yeah, still struggling with it, which is weird in itself considering everything that's happened. I flopped on the sofa and tipped my head back with a sigh. I feel bad that you guys missed class to deal with my issues. It's not that big a deal. I didn't have a reading partner in literature the last couple of days either. Sorry about that. I didn't go anyway. What? Why? I knew for a fact that he'd been skipping enough that his grade was in peril and he'd just start showing up again. Thought it was because of Mrs. Roberts' threat. Ewan looked away awkwardly. You weren't there, so... You were showing up just because of me? I mean, I didn't mind it when I had a decent reading partner. What's your issue with literature anyway? You really hate reading that much? I don't mind it in general. It's the plays that bother me, that's all. Brings back memories I don't really care to dwell on. I chewed my lip thinking about that. Plays and memories he didn't like to dwell on. Giving up on performing had really been a struggle for him, hadn't it? I knew some people might be dismissive of a kid's interests in a lost dream, but at the same time, sometimes the most passionate people develop their interests when they were quite young. I've been drawing all my life, and it was something I couldn't even fathom losing. I mean, suddenly I couldn't do art anymore for some reason, I'd be devastated. It was my thing. It was part of what made me, me. And interestingly enough, I chose a route where it doesn't really portray any of your art in the game. I could not paint. I'd read a book once that said being an artist was about having a scream inside you that wanted to get out in a special way, and it truly was like that for me. Like there was something that came from deep inside, something I couldn't ignore. I imagine Ewan's drive to perform and love for being on stage were probably similar. Being in a situation where he couldn't risk putting himself in front of a lot of people meant losing that. I'm sure it had to be devastating. I want to find out what happened. Ewan, is it okay to ask about what happened back then? Maybe it was just curiosity or being nosy, but part of it was just wanting to know more about him. Wondering if there was some way I could help. Ewan sighed. I almost expected him to say no, but instead, he slouched next to me on the sofa and ran a hand through his hair. That's not some huge secret or anything, I just don't really like talking about it. You don't have to then, I mean, you don't have to talk about it if it's that difficult. He shot me a crooked smile. It's okay. It was just pretty awful. Basically, I was with a local theater company, people who were serious about acting, not just hobbyists. I mean, I'd done lessons, classes, I just really loved being on stage back then. Everything about it was fun, exciting. Anyway, we were rehearsing an original play by the owner, and I had one of the lead roles. The schedule was pretty rigorous, but it was in the summer, so it was fine. I was pretty exhausted during the opening week. I remember it was a weekend performance. I'd been feeling kind of weird all day, just, I don't know, sluggish, foggy. Thought I was coming down with something. I mean, until that point, I'd shown no Fey traits. We assumed I hadn't inherited enough of my dad's Fey blood to be more than a human with some magic talent. And I was fine with that. I mean, my dad was okay, but based on what I knew about Fey at the time, I had no interest in being one of them. My experiences with them hadn't been great. Turns out I wasn't getting sick. My Fey heritage just suddenly decided to assert itself in the worst way and at the worst possible time. I passed out on stage mid-performance, and by passed out, I mean I hit the floor and my head went rolling. Exited stage left, and the rest of me just lay there with green smoke pouring out. I was too out of it to remember much. Everyone freaked, obviously. Fortunately, my parents were there that night. I came to with my dad dragging my body through the alley behind the theater, my stupid head under his arm. Mom tried to contain the damage until the local agency got there, but it was a major incident. Containment and the control unit had chased down dozens of people, stopped the police reports, erase memories, keep an eye on news outlets to make sure the story wasn't contained, then to track on all pictures and videos. It's just an ordeal. They concocted the story that I was badly injured on set, so I guess that part turned out fine. It was another story in the news cycle to everyone else. It didn't leave me my room for 2 weeks trying to figure out how to control this stupid ability. Quickly I realized I can't. Not yet. I was terrified it would happen again. dropped the play completely, thinking I'd go back when I got control. And I never did. There were several smaller incidents at school. I tried my best to go on living normally, but after the first few encore appearances of the headless actor, I just started to isolate yourself. He gave me a long look. Yeah, that. My family eventually moved. Mom wanted to give me a fresh start somewhere else or whatever. Yeah, I know how that goes. But at least you have people who understand you now. People who won't freak out no matter what happens. You fainted. I was having a bad day, and I only fainted once, thank you very much. Just because we're all in this club together doesn't mean we understand each other. If you think I get what it's like to have crave blood or to have my entire body transform at night, you're wrong. Everyone here understands the frustration of not being normal, of having to keep part of yourself a secret. No one can really understand what it's like to deal with my problems. In the end, that part is the whole problem. I wasn't sure I believed that. But Ewan was so convinced, and I wasn't sure how to make him see otherwise. Ewan's phone chimed, and he quickly pulled it out, glancing down at the screen. A slow smirk spread across his face. Is it Drayson? What's that? Drayson's hiding in your room. He says Spencer's cranky. And that he is. More so than usual lately. I suddenly felt very weird about Drayson being in my room alone. Didn't really think this one through. Though I didn't think Drayson would snoop or anything. Then again, he was such a ditz he might do it without thinking that I might not like it. Ewan frowned slightly as another message came through. What now? He definitely senses fairy magic from Spencer. I did too, but I thought it was just residual magic from being around you. I mean, it can rub off in small amounts. Drayson says the magic is coming from Spencer himself. It's just really weak. What does that mean? I don't know. He said there were several other magic auras in the house that don't feel like either of you. It's definitely fairy magic. Evidence of some fairy activity for sure. That doesn't sound good, any of it. Is he saying Spencer has magic? Why? I mean, I did because of the Changeling thing, but why would he? I told Drayson to stay sharp and not let his guard down. I'm really worried about him being there alone. Whatever's going on there, he could probably handle it better than you. No offense, but you're still new to this. He's a full-fledged cryptic who has dealt with this stuff all his life. He's gonna be fine. I really hope you're right. Final bell rang at that moment. As I sat there worrying about my family, my friends, and the entire situation. How did we even get to this point? Spencer has magic of his own. Shouldn't he have been able to see the club? I know he came up here several times while stalking me around. Well, it depends. Whatever magic is coming from him is very, very weak. It's possible that it just wasn't enough to trigger the entrance spell. Like I said, I thought it was just residual magic from interacting with you. The club isn't going to react to the level of magic. I mean, if the club reacted to residual magic, a lot of normal students would be able to enter because they interact with club members frequently. Pretty much everyone who spends time with Corbin has trace amounts of his magic clanging to them. But they can't see the club either. That's true. I was changed because I was in fairy, so now I have magic too. Is it possible that Spencer was somehow, I don't know, mutated by being around the Changeling so much? I don't think so. You were changed because your body was in a place where it was literally bombarded by fairy magic nonstop for who knows how long. I don't think just being around a fairy for a few years would be able to change him to that degree. This was something he was born with? Seems like that's probably the case. It's possible that because you two share a pretty deep bond as twins, that the changes to your life energy affected him. I'm not really too knowledgeable about twins, though. I know they can have that kind of connection, though. But... Hey, guys! Nora! Didn't know you were here. Hey! I just got here a little while ago, actually. Is everything okay? Allie told us there was a problem, but she didn't really explain what was going on. Well, I don't know about everything being okay yet. There's definitely a situation, unfortunately. We also don't know what's going on, not really. Ewan gave him a brief rundown of the situation at my house. Allie came in while he was talking and just stood near the door listening. So that's what the sleepwalking was about. I was wondering. I didn't realize things had gotten that bad, though. Me either. Wish we could have helped out more. It's not your job to babysit me. It's nothing to do with babysitting. We just want to help out a friend. I appreciate that. Maybe you two can keep an eye on things now. We don't know how long Drayson is going to be staying. Hopefully not long, though. I don't think my nerves can handle it. Couldn't think of it. This might be why Brenna's been acting so weird lately. Brenna? You mean at school? How's she been acting weird? Oh yeah, you guys are pretty close. I wouldn't say we're close. It's just... Brenna's his cat. Nora! Probably should have let them reveal it a little more gently, but my nerves were too frazzled to dance around that subject. Might as well just get everything out in the open while we're discussing it all. Wait. What? Okay, it's been a while since something surprised me that much. Brenna's your cat? This explains a lot about your relationship with her. It's not what you guys think. She just showed up one day, and I didn't realize she wasn't a normal cat. So we adopted her. But then she turned out to be, well, Brenna. Except she's just stuck around, so... Yeah, Brenna is my cat. Ewan, I don't think I mentioned this before, or maybe I have, but your family is super weird. Ewan's family? She's his aunt. Brenna's your aunt? Nora. I mean, I'm not wrong, so... Oh my god, can you just stop casually dropping these bombshells on us? I smirked slightly. You're enjoying this way too much. It's my revenge for all the times you people did this to me. Ewan just sighed and, I guess, decided to just go with it. Yes, she's my aunt, sort of. I don't know. I can't work out if she's actually married to my uncle or just engaged to him. Whoa, an uncle? Is he anything like your dad? I don't know. Never met him. Based on what my dad is willing to tell me, I don't think he can actually leave Fairy for some reason. Anyway, it's not that big a deal. If you want a really crazy bombshell, Drayson is Mark's cousin. What? How is that even possible? Drayson's dad is with Mark's uncle, so... Oh my god, is everyone in this club related to everyone else somehow? It's super weird. The idea of those two at family gatherings really, really amused me. Kind of wanted to see it, to be honest. Ewan just laughed. I've met a few times at Drayson's place, so yeah. Man, someone needs to create a relationship chart at this place so we can figure out who's related to whom. This is nuts. As long as no one is their own grandfather or something, I think it's fine. Jeez. Anyway, I just came to drop off some stuff. I'm going to have to head out. I'm wanted at the agency, unfortunately. I'll probably have to give a full report on your situation, though. I wouldn't expect anything to come of that. Nothing more than them monitoring it from afar. This is way too steeped in fairy politics for them to get involved at this point. Helpful. Though I'll see if maybe someone has some connections that might help us out. You never know. I understand. We need to head off too, but we'll definitely keep an eye on your place tonight, okay? Thanks. No problem. We'll let you know if anything happens. Three of them waved and headed off. Allie gave us a bag of food from the murder before she left out, but to be honest, I wasn't all that hungry. All the fairy drama wasn't doing much for my appetite. I was too worried about, well, everything. Ewan didn't have that problem, though apparently he was already digging into one of the bags for a sandwich. Pulled a pillow in my lap, frowning at nothing. Hey, Ewan? Yeah? I was just wondering, you said your uncle can't leave Fairy. Is that somehow related to your dad's exile? Why do you ask? I don't know, just trying to get a better feel for fairy politics, as Allie says. Trying to understand what makes fairies fairy along, but they do the things they do. Guess I just feel like I understand them. I'll be able to figure some of this out. I don't really know the story behind my uncle, to be honest. Dad won't talk about it. I mean, I've worked some stuff out on my own, based on some of my own experiences. I guess you could say I've got a working hypothesis. Do you mind sharing it? I don't know what that hearing it will really help you solve the enigma of fairies or anything, but look, you know my dad was part of the Slow, right? Right, yeah. Unseelie host went around being a jerk, as Unseelies are wont to do, I suppose. Anyway, humans know the Slow as some kind of terrifying host of fairies and ghosts, bullies for the most part, but they're way more than just that to the Unseelie court. The fairies you've learned about, the Seelies and Unseelies, they aren't the only fae, not in this world, not in other worlds. And not all factions get along. The Slow is an army, and my dad was a captain in that army, more or less, fought battles for the Unseelies for centuries. Then he met my mom, and he ditched his duties, abandoned the knighthood, and vanished into the human world. For a long time, the fairies tried to get him back, mostly by going after my mom. Because of course they did. Well, my dad was one of their best, and they never succeeded. So eventually they just exiled him. It's kind of a weak punishment, considering he left willingly in the first place. And if he tried to go back, they'd probably welcome him. But when he had me, suddenly all the renewed interest. Whether I was a human or a fae, they wanted me. So they really came after you. Relentlessly. I don't remember much of it, really. A few times when I was old enough, I remember them trying to lure me away. Fairies have this urge to wander away anyway, and their voices are pretty seductive. But every time, my dad was there to bring me back home. Over the years, they kind of retreated and left us alone. Still, when it became obvious I was fae, they were back at it again. Stubborn jerks, aren't they? Stubborn and dangerous. That's the part of the story I know. The part I've theorized about is that. I think they sent Brenna after me. My head was kind of muddled back then, so I don't remember it well, but I do remember a black cat. Brenna? You think Brenna was sent for you? Well, she was a knight as well, one of their most terrifying, actually. That part my dad did tell me. I can't see her as a knight, really, but I get a terrifying part. She's still terrifying. I knew at the time that someone big had been sent after us. I never really knew how Dad got us out of that situation, but I think my dad convinced her to leave us alone, for his brother's sake, because we're family. If that's true, it makes sense why she'd have been exiled, and Why they took pains to make sure my uncle couldn't leave. It would have been punishment for everyone. I'm sure losing two of their best knights smarted, so they didn't want to lose my uncle too. That explains why Brenna hates the Unseelie so much. I knew she had a major issue with them, but I honestly never would have thought it was because of a pretty dramatic love story. Fairies are fickle, moody cheaters, but when they love, it's with everything they've got. I mean, look at my dad. He gave up everything to be with my mom, and he never looked back. Oh, I could probably use this to get on Ewan's good side here. I admire people who can love like that. I really admire that ability to love with the whole heart like that. To just throw everything aside and give yourself over to that kind of emotion. You may find this hard to believe, but I struggle a little with feelings. Sincerity isn't really one of my virtues. I don't think that's totally true. Your snark is incredibly sincere, I think. Besides, as far as virtues go, I mean, I think sincerity should be low on the list of concerns. Hey, are you implying I don't have many virtues? I'm just saying you might want to worry about some of the more important ones, you know, kindness, compassion. I'll have you know I am a super compassionate person. Height. Hey! I smacked his arm. Height isn't even a virtue. It is if you want anything off the top shelf in the kitchen. I elbowed him in the gut, but he just laughed. To be honest, though, I feel the same way. I admire the part of Fae that can love so deeply, or pour themselves so fully into their endeavors. I pity so many of those endeavors involve kidnapping. Exactly. I hate the part of them, of us, that makes us do terrible things without batting an eye. I don't think you have to include yourself in that us. You're not like that. Sometimes I wonder. I don't think I can say I got all the good parts and none of the bad. I didn't say you don't have any bad qualities, just said I don't think you're a kidnapper. Thanks. I think. So what's your take on the Spencer thing anyway? I mean, I know you're not an expert, but I'd like to hear your thoughts. At any rate, you know more about the Fae than I do. Well, I don't know what's really going on with them or anything, but my main concern right now is that part of the reason they're so reluctant to let you go is because you got tangled with my family. I worry we did more harm than good when we tried to help you. Well, that isn't true at all. The Changeling thing was a pretty serious situation that needed to be taken care of. Yeah, but it might have been best to let you try to get help from the murderer or anyone else. Brenna, my dad, and I have a strange relationship with the Unseelie and a long history. If by helping you, we raised their ire. I still know the payoff is worth that. I mean, we did the whole ritual with you. If we just dumped the potion on your head and called it a day, they might not have taken as much notice. As it is, it's clear you've got an actual relationship with the... Suddenly colored and looked away. With us. I mean, you know that you actually know us and everything. It wasn't some coincidence or momentary lapse of judgment or whatever. I think you're jumping to conclusions. We don't know that they wouldn't have started going after Spencer regardless of who helped me. Maybe, but I feel like they should have moved on by now with a simple broken contract, but they haven't. I know they can be weirdly stubborn about things, but this feels like more revenge. And look, they lost my dad, they lost Brenna, me, now you. 4 losses, all related to the same family, is a lot to deal with, and changelings are particularly valuable. I just worry that we really anger them with this. 4 losses. Ewan kept talking, but I kind of tuned him out a bit because somehow that felt wrong. They lost me, but I didn't know why. It was like an old memory that I couldn't quite fully latch onto. On top of that, they could be worried my dad gave you fairy secrets that he shouldn't have. That would definitely make them reluctant to let you go. I don't know why I felt like the Fae had lost Spencer too. Because they never had him to begin with. I was their target from the start? Why didn't that feel right? Ewan paused, giving me a curious look. Nora. Fairies and Spencer. What's wrong? I don't know, it feels like there's something I'm forgetting. Something important. And weirdly, Spencer said the same thing to me earlier today. What do you think you're forgetting? I gave him a disparaging look. If I knew that I wouldn't be forgotten, would I? Yes, I know that. Thank you. I was hoping for a general idea. I mean, what is it in relation to? Spencer and fairies. Think there's some connection there besides you? I don't know. I mean, I told you before, when we were kids, we both saw them. I mean, I think we did. It's all a bit faded by now, but I do remember seeing weird things, and Spencer did as well. All the time, frequently, everywhere. I've been thinking about that, actually. Maybe the two of you did have some kind of hidden fairy heritage. It would explain the weak magic aura he has, and it could be why the Fae targeted you in the first place. Targeted me? Yeah, as a changeling? What if I wasn't their target? What do you mean by that? You remember that morning with Kara outside? That day she mentioned something weird, something about Spencer going missing? When she said that, at first I thought nothing like that had ever happened, but suddenly it was like a memory tried to surface, and then all the pain, and every time I think about it I get a headache. But I think she might have been right. I think Spencer did go missing when we were little. I just can't recall the details. He said he's been dreaming about the past and feels like he's forgotten something, and I'm just having the same feeling, I guess. Maybe there really is more going on here than we know. Can you tell me more about your childhood here? Maybe we can work out when this contract happened, what the events were surrounding it. It might give us some hints. It's possible your history with the Fae and Pine Hollow is more important to what's happening now than we thought. Sure. I don't really know where to start, though. I mean, we were born here. There's a lot of history. When you first remember seeing fairies? I don't know. I don't really know. I feel like we could see them forever, really. I had forgotten so long, but now it's all come back to me. I can't recall a time in my life we didn't see them. I guess I didn't really forget. It's more like I sort of eventually started thinking it was all pretend play, just imaginary friends and that kind of thing. But now, I mean, with everything that's happened, I started wondering maybe it wasn't pretend. The more I thought about it, the more it felt less like a dream and more like it was all real. I mean, we'd see faces in the trees, strange little people, we'd hear voices in the woods singing. This is going to sound weird, but my grandmother had this apple tree, and there was this old man that lived in it. She always said she had to leave the last apple of the season for him, so there would be apples the next year. I asked if she could see him, but she said that she had only seen him once or twice when she was a little girl, but that tree came from a sapling her mother had given her. A sapling from a tree at the house she grew up in. Grandma said that the old man had followed her from her childhood home. Sounds like your grandmother was also sensitive to fairies. It definitely sounds like something that runs in your family. There's also this lady in green that Spencer and I used to see in the woods a lot. Long, blonde hair, green dress. She was weird. Every time she saw us, she'd take her hands and let us back as if we were lost. Even if we were just playing or knew where we were, she would always lead us back home. She had this really weird way of talking, sort of lopsided and limping, and I swear one time I saw a tail. Sounds like a Gleistig, maybe. You're lucky all she did was lead you home. They can be pretty dangerous. There was this weird hill in the woods behind her house that we used to play on a lot. She hated when we went near. What? Ewan had the weirdest look on his face when I mentioned that hill. A fairy hill? Was that a fairy hill, Nora? I don't... My mind went blank and there was a sharp pain behind my eyes. Nora! Sorry, just had a sudden headache. Ewan sat back against the cushions, regarding me with a serious look on his face. A headache when you try to remember that hill, and one when you try to remember something about Spencer vanishing as a child? What is it? Can't say for sure based just on what you've told me, but I bet part of what you're forgetting is that someone doesn't want you to remember what happened at that hill. What do you mean by that? It's possible someone put a seal on your memories about that place. Something, meaning something to do with all this. The Changeling thing, Spencer and me. A strange hill, a protective fairy that wanted you to stay away from it. And I happen to know there is a fairy mound here in Pine Hollow that's been dormant for about 10 years, give or take. Dormant fairy hill. There's that feeling again, that reticent memory, and that pain. So it all goes back to that hill then. Somehow that felt right. I couldn't say why. But even so, where did Spencer fit in all of it? Couldn't help but feel all of it was my fault. That I should have protected him better. Not to mention that it felt like I'd somehow put my parents in harm's way with all this as well. And Ewan's family also got pulled in. With their history, I was certain they'd prefer to not be dealing with this again. Sorry. Sorry for dragging you into this. I'm sorry for dragging your family into all this. Don't be. It feels more like we dragged you in. Let's see how that could be possible by the case. If it wasn't for me, none of this, it's not your fault. Look, I'm not worried about Dad. I know he can look after himself. Sorry I dragged him into it. Don't be. I think he was looking for an excuse to do something crazy and get out of the bakery for a while. And the curse of the disappearing pastries? He grinned. Yes. And listen, he's Fae, but he's not a bad person. I never thought he was. I sighed softly. I'm worried about my family, too. I know. Must be nice to be able to share everything with them about both worlds. Sometimes, I guess. I'll never be able to tell mine. I mean, that's what everyone keeps saying. It'll be pretty dangerous. Yeah, it's dangerous now and they don't know anything. There are worse things than secrets, believe me. I could definitely imagine. I had to admit, I felt a little better after all that, though I'd feel better if I had solid answers. Ewan and I continued to talk for the rest of the afternoon. Some of it was talking about the current situation, or me sharing more of my childhood. Some of Ewan explaining various things about fairy society. All of it was punctuated by texts from Drayson, mostly silly things about my brother being grumpy or whatever. At several points I was seriously worried about my family, probably thinking I'd gone insane. I couldn't wait to get back and deal with all the fallout of Drayson's exuberance. Allie also checked in with us. A lot of it just felt like waiting. Though for what, I wasn't sure. News of some kind, I guess. There was never any sort of news that came. I don't really know when I fell asleep. The sleep wasn't restful at all. I was troubled with strange dreams of eerie music, whispering voices, and dark, echoing spaces, and a deep, uncomfortable feeling of needing to find something and knowing I was going to lose myself forever if I did. The only good thing about it was not waking up to my brother trying to break into my room in the middle of the night. Felt like I'd barely gotten an hour's sleep when the clicking of the club door woke me up. I sat up groggily looking around. That's some pretty amazing bed hair you got there. I made a face at her, knowing that Ewan had relocated to one of his chairs. He looked wide awake. I had no idea when Allie had arrived. What time is it? Nearly 8 in the morning. What? I don't feel like I slept nearly that long. You look like you were having bad dreams. I wasn't sure if I should wake you or not. I stretched slightly. I don't really remember dreaming anything, to be honest. I rubbed my head, biting back another yawn. Don't do this. Oh, got me. Got me. So what's happening with everything? I haven't heard from Drayson since pretty early this morning. What'd he say? It was close to 3 in the morning, and all he said was, "I see what Nora means." That's it? I stood quickly, the last dregs of sleep draining away. We need to go check. Just calm down. Maybe he's still asleep. He is pretending to be you, but sick. Yeah, maybe he's asleep. And maybe my crazy fairy-possessed brother killed him in his sleep. That escalated quickly. I don't think Spencer has regressed to being capable of murder just yet. Yeah, you haven't seen how creepy he's been lately. I seriously don't know how you people could be so calm all about all this. Well, I know this all seems dramatic and upsetting for you, but, well, we're kind of used to it. That's not reassuring. Look, you stay here. I'll go check it out and see what's going on. We can't really have an extra Nora showing up at your house. I'm not the extra. I'm the real one. Thank you very much. The door to the library suddenly slammed open and a familiar pink-haired unicorn burst into the club room. Ewan, big problem. Is that... Drayson. Drayson, what on earth did you do? What the hell's going on? Put me down! He saw me. I mean, the glamour kind of started to fade, and he saw it, and I just... Did you kidnap my brother? I didn't know what else to do! I said put me down! Startled, Drayson did just that, and Spencer stood there, red-faced, glaring at everyone, looking like he might bolt for the door any second. Did you really carry him all the way here over your shoulder like that? Better yet, how did you carry him all the way here? Well, I mean, he is kind of a horse, sort of, and as long as you're a virgin... Yeah, well, that definitely describes Spencer. Will someone tell me what the hell is going on here? I guess now is as good a time as any. Why don't you sit down? This may take a while. The road to Fairy. Oh, we're going to tell Spencer everything. We're going to go back to that hill. And this is all going to come to an end. It took a little while to convince Spencer that no one is going to eat him, maim him, kill him, or basically do any horrible thing to him. He wasn't convinced Drayson was the unicorn, which nearly sent Drayson to tears until Ewan took him out to calm him down. Poor sensitive little soul. Spencer was desperately trying to have his aha moment, but it was too terrified to actually do much ahaing, and having caught me out on all my evil secrets. Instead, he was huddled on one end of the sofa, looking like he might cry as well. I mean, I knew that Norma wasn't normal, that there were weird things happening. I didn't expect all this. I didn't expect you to be part of it. Then it's time to change your expectations. Good people exist on this side of things, Spencer. Like me, Drayson, Ewan. And me. I was getting to you. I should have been at the top of the list. Thank you very much. Hey, you're not the boss of me. I should be that too. I should have known the two of you wouldn't take any of this seriously. Hey, I'm taking this seriously. You creeped around my bedroom for like 3 nights like a possessed stalker. I'm completely serious. Spencer looked away awkwardly. I don't remember doing anything like that. Yeah, that's why you look like a puppy that just got caught doing something naughty. Glared at me. I just remember having strange dreams the last few nights. Stranger than usual. They often work through dreams, so that's part's not all that strange. There you go about fairies again. Are you even serious with that? Fairies and unicorns? That stuff is all real. I don't believe that. So help me if I don't stop being a pain. If you don't stop being a pain, I'm going to drag you in back in here, yank his head off, and beat you to death with it. You're gonna do what with my head now? Wow, Nora, that was kind of extreme. Shut up. Spencer, you may not believe us, but for the record, Ewan is Fae. A Dullahan, to be precise, though I staunchly object to any part of my body being used as a murder weapon. Dullahan? Headless horseman? He rolled his eyes. Yeah, right. Is this guy even serious? After everything he's seen, he's going to sit there and say he doesn't believe us. Just because I've seen some weird stuff doesn't mean I'm going to believe fairies are real or whatever else you might want to try to tell me. I'm not going to believe anything stupid like Headless Horsemen exist. Give me a break. I want the truth, not some stupid lie. So you only believe what you see then. He set his hand on top of his head and... Ewan, I don't think that's actually a good... No, I think this is one time it's warranted. I thought you couldn't control... He gave his head a solid yank with a distressingly squishy sound. The flesh pulled apart and a spiral of green smoke escaped. He gets much better at it when he's mad. You see that? Well then. Not sure what he'd been thinking of saying to that little demonstration, but before he could get anything out, his eyes rolled back and he slumped down on the sofa. Ewan just let out a very annoyed sigh. Well, this has all gone well. Thanks a lot, Ewan. I'm here to help. You'd think given everything he's been through, he'd be a bit more immune to the shock, wouldn't you? I wonder if the fainting thing is genetic. Very funny. Now we have to wait for him to wake back up. Maybe he'll be a bit more reasonable when he does. Based on what I've seen so far, I wouldn't count on it. Then we'll have to keep trying until he listens. Stubbornness only goes so far. He'll eventually have to listen. I hoped. I'm not saying I believe you yet. Just, until a few days ago, Nora was a changeling. That's right. I did read that in your journal. Wait, what? You read that? I was looking for answers. You aren't even supposed to be able to read that code anymore. You said you forgot it. He shifted uncomfortably. I couldn't believe he'd snooped my journal, much less actually lie to me about our code. It hurt my feelings so much back then, too. The idea that he'd forgotten something that had just been between the two of us. The moment was probably when I really had to face the fact that he hated me. Jerk. I don't know what all Nora wrote in that journal, but if you read it, then you surely are kind of understanding what's happening here. I didn't think it was real. I thought she was just writing things to throw me off. I mean, there was so much weird stuff in there. Geez, what do you take me for here? I thought you were, an imposter. I sighed softly. Well, in the end, you weren't wrong in a way. But I don't get it. If you were Changeling, why... that Nora was an imposter, right? And you're the real one? But then, how do you remember everything? Yeah, the whole Changeling thing is a bit more complicated than that. Let's just say I was part imposter and part real Nora. And now I'm all real Nora. That soul transfer stuff? Yeah. Then what about him? He was you, right up until he kidnapped me? Jason gave him a sheepish smile as he toyed with his end of his braid. Sorry about that. I just panicked a little. It's technically Allie's fault anyway. Hey! You're the one that suggested a spy. Spy? We weren't sure what was going on with you since you started sleepwalking, and Allie suggested we have someone stay in the house and pretend to be me. That way we could work out who the fairies are targeting now. Jason has nothing to do with the Changeling thing, though. I guess that explains why you spent all evening calling me Winston. Sorry, I couldn't remember your name. I still don't understand what you mean by targeting. Well, it seems like the Fae are pretty reluctant to let Nora go. We're not totally sure why, since there could be a lot of reasons. Regardless, they've been influencing you while you sleep, and we weren't sure what they were planning. We still don't know, really. Well, I think if they just wanted Spencer as some kind of revenge, they'd have him leave the house. But instead, it seems like he was trying to get to Nora's room. Either way, either they want to use him to get her, or he did try to go outside several times. I was gonna say that. Maybe they're targeting you both. Look, I don't know if I buy all this. I guess some of it aligns with things I've seen myself, but if the Fae want to kidnap us or something, aren't they being kind of ineffectual? You guys are saying they can control me when I sleep. Can't they just have me wander off to wherever they want to take me? They might be able to influence you in your sleep, but that doesn't mean that you can just control you like a puppet. So carting you off to the nearest gate might not be that easy yet. I was literally trapped in a fairy's body, and she didn't manage to make me walk off in the middle of the night either. I always woke up before getting too far. In any case, it's more likely they're looking for some way to trick you both into another contract. It's the surest way to make certain you don't escape again. Another contract? I feel like I'm missing pieces of the puzzle here. Basically, fairies enter in some kind of contract with a family or individual before they can do the whole Changeling thing. We're assuming that somehow I was entered in this changing contract as a child. They swapped me out, partially. Because they don't just nab you and run off these days. No, that's the old-fashioned way of doing things. They play a lovely little game of musical chairs with your soul, then use you as camouflage so the kidnapper doesn't get caught out. Because fairies suck at acting human. So that's why you were able to change like that. Change? I mean, you know, your face and stuff, your hair. Now I'm the one confused. What are you talking about? When did I do that? Well, 5 years ago, for one. When my eye... He put 2 fingers up to his injured eye, sighing softly. I don't remember what happened back then, Spencer. I really don't. I know you haven't even believed me, but if what you're saying now is true, then I guess it might make sense you wouldn't remember. Will you tell me what happened, what you saw back then? He chewed the inside of his cheek for a minute before he finally seemed to find some sort of resolve. Fine, I'll tell you what really happened back then. I tried to tell people so many times, but no one believed me. I'll believe you. I mean, we all will. At this point, none of us really has a reason to lie anymore. And I want to... Now I think I need to know what happened. Because now I knew there really was a monster involved. It might not have been me, but I'd been trapped in her body at the time. Well, that day I was out looking for you, you know, with some of the adults. Mom didn't want me to go, but I wanted to. I mean, I wanted to find you, to bring you home. I heard voices in the woods, and it was the same voices we'd always heard as kids. I hadn't thought of that in a long time. I mean, I guess it had just faded to the point I didn't think it was real. His voice trembled slightly as he spoke of it. I wanted so badly to reach out and take his hands, tell him it was okay, but instead, it was Allie who took his hand and gave it a gentle squeeze. I bit my lip and looked away. When I heard those voices, I just felt really scared. None of the adults could hear them, though, and I just knew something was really, really wrong. I went off on my own, following the sound, and I stumbled into this clearing where I saw... Well, I don't know, I guess a fae. The Changeling. She was tall, with white hair and horns like this. He indicated with slightly curved motions near his forehead. She was there surrounded by lights. I guess, I mean, maybe those were fairies too or something? But when they saw me, it was suddenly you standing there staring at me. But I don't know, it was you, but it wasn't. I remember thinking that you looked like a complete stranger in that moment. Then all the lights rushed at me, and I ran off into the trees. They were screaming, pulling at my hair. One of them... He touched his eye again, trailing off as he stared at the floor. So that's why you thought I was an imposter all this time? I mean, if you saw her change like that... I can only imagine what went through your head when you saw Drayson's glamour falter. Yeah, well, I knew something was weird about that version of you anyway. I've never seen you that bouncy, ever. Mom was convinced you were completely delirious with fever. That's why she made you stay home again. Saying of which, if she comes home and we're not there, she's gonna freak out. That's true. I don't know about going home. Is it even safe? Well, now that we're all on the same page about everything, handling this should be a little easier. Nor, if you still have the St. John's wort we gave you before, I recommend putting it around both your rooms. Should keep things out for at least one night. And the rest of us can work on a more permanent solution to all this. It may not need to be that permanent. Keep in mind that Samhain is just around the corner. What's that? Well, it's a pagan holiday, actually, but the reason it's important is that, well, there are these magic currents thingies that flow everywhere, and apparently they overflow at certain times of the year, which makes all paranormal things go nuts. Spencer shot Allie a curious look. That's the basic gist of it. Fairies are inherently magical. Obviously, they become way more active at this time of year. In addition, the boundaries of fairy expand, and there's already a big overlap between fairy and the real world here in Pine Hollow. It gets even bigger this time of year. Wait, fairies are the creatures, but they're all from a place that's also called fairy? Did they name themselves after their homeland, or the other way around? Because that's pretty stuck up. Not the point. He looked at Allie, raising an eyebrow. They're distressingly similar when he's not being angry at everything, aren't they? You have no idea. Hello, we can hear you. I hope you know. Anyway, yes. Anyway, what I was trying to say is that there are also several fairy gates in the area that open up this time of year, paths that go straight into the heart of fairy, and it's easier to open up random gates to there in general. That may explain why they're so determined to try to get to you now. This is the easiest time of year to drag mortals to fairy, but if we can hold out for a few days, that'll all be over. A lot can happen in a few days, but it won't. Look, we'll get the two of you back home before your mom gets suspicious. Nor you have tons of broom out by your house. You should grab some sprigs of it and tie it with red thread if you can. There's also the St. John's wort and the bell I gave you. Those things will also help keep things settled for at least one night. That's fine, but we need a better solution than staying huddled in our rooms in fear for the next 4.5 days. Look, if you could try to get your parents out of the house tomorrow, we'll come over and ward the hell out of your place. That'll keep everything at bay, I promise. What if they keep coming after us, even after Samhain? I don't think that'll be the case. At that point, this will be a big enough issue that the agency may step in. I don't know. We'll need to cross that bridge if we get to it. Right. It was frustrating that we weren't priority for the agency just because fairies were involved. Why did they get to run amok? What do they wanted? And do what they wanted and face no consequences? Just because they were capable of being a nuisance? Then again, the Unseelies had a well-known terrifying army. I guess it was hard to go against something like that. But still. For now, let's just go home. Yeah. At any rate, he seemed better. I mean, he wasn't exactly gushing at me or anything, but he wasn't being hateful. He was just normal. So I guess something did come of all this. Good did come of all this. I was going to have to try to focus on that instead of whatever possible danger was lurking literally everywhere. We did what Ali said with the fairy banes. I gathered some broom, hunted for the red string to tie it up with. What is it with fairies in red anyway? I showed Spencer the jars of herbs I've gotten from Shelley. I spent a really long time explaining things like fairy banes and fairy favors. Something else we did. Looked everywhere for any of them that night remain. We only found a few, thankfully. Oh, and I told him about the brownie. I wasn't sure he totally believed me on that one until he awkwardly said he thought he saw it once. But he told himself it was a rat because, well, who just casually accepts a weird little person running around the house? We talked and talked and talked. When Mom and Dad came home, we pretended to sleep until they went to bed before we huddled in my room again and talked pretty much all night. And, you know, we're completely paranoid and freaked out. We kept checking the doors and windows and pacing around nervously. Neither of us slept. And nothing in particular happened. For one blissful night, things were silent. And yet, I couldn't help but feel the night was strangely tense, like everything was holding its breath during a watchful calm. And a terrifying storm was just around the corner. I paced back and forth anxiously in the kitchen, peeking into the foyer when I heard the door shut. Spencer was leaning against the front door, peering outside. He shook his head slightly and waved me back. I ducked back into the kitchen, biting my thumbnail as I waited for the sound of the car. We finally managed to talk to Mom and Dad into a date night for the evening, which would leave the house empty for Spencer and I to deal with the fairy problem. Wednesday and Thursday night had been quiet. We used all the protections Ali suggested, but since we couldn't get Mom and Dad out of the house, there wasn't much more we could do. Friday morning, we found a fairy favor in the kitchen on the table in plain view. Mom thankfully thought it was something I gathered up for her or something. I didn't like it. Until that moment, they had always hidden them, but this one had just been sitting at the center of the table when we got up. I felt like a warning or a challenge. I peeked back into the foyer, and this time Spencer gave me a thumbs up. Finally. I hurried back to the door. I hurried to the back door and peered across the yard. I could just see Allie's head peeking over the gate. I waved her toward the house. We only had a few hours, so we were going to have to work fast, and I just hoped a few hours would be enough. The first order of business was to gather everyone around the table, hashing out a plan. Allie was with us, and that alone was enough to make me feel more confident about our chances of resolving this for good. Shelley was also with us. Given that she was another talented witch, it was reassuring to have her helping. I was really grateful she agreed to come over when I called. Drayson had also showed up, which, well, Drayson was Drayson, but I was kind of glad to have him anyway. He could be weirdly reliable at times. Ditzy, or not. He was definitely an expert at magic, being that he was kind of a magic creature and all. Besides, he'd seen what was going on firsthand, so that was helpful. Of course, we also had Spencer and Ewan with us. Not sure Spencer would help much, but I was obviously glad Ewan was there. I mean, apart from Brenna, he was probably the most knowledgeable about fairies out of everyone I knew. Okay, so let's get started. I told Vilas what's going on, so he was willing to let us off on any intern duties for now. But fortunately, he gets that this is important. Glad to see that even if the rest of the agency doesn't give a damn, he does. That's not exactly the situation, but I guess the end result is the same regardless. I sighed softly. I know, I guess. Where exactly do we start with all this? We don't have much time. I think we should start with some wards, around the house and around some of the interior rooms. We could try for some things specifically geared toward keeping fairies out of the house completely, which would include me, of course. We could probably make some sort of charm that would allow you inside, though. In the end, we only need to outlast them. We already decided that after Samhain, they'd probably back off. There's still plenty of time for them to cause issues, though, and the closer we get to Samhain, the stronger they'll get. They've been quite the last few nights, though. Then again, there was that fairy favor they left on the table. We can't count on them staying quiet much longer. Oh, I don't say I wanted to count on that. Believe me, I'm not taking any more chances with these weirdos. We could try some traditional fairy banes, but to be honest, I'm not sure they'll be enough. They don't even work against all fae, from what I understand, and they're also less effective against some of the stronger ones. It's true. We're not dealing with some solitary fae who wants to cause trouble. We're up against the unseelie court here. That may be true, but it's not like they're going to send the slow after the single changeling. I really hope you're right. Frankly, we have to remember that all this has to be done without our parents noticing. Yeah, that's an added level of complexity to deal with. When will they be back anyway? I'm not sure, so we need to get this done quickly. Is this really going to work? All this stuff about wards and banes? That's all we have. I bit my lip and studied him quietly. He was very, very pale. Looked scared to death. I couldn't blame him. This wasn't exactly the smoothest transition into the world of the paranormal. You okay? I don't know. I know the feeling. Come on, guys. It's gonna be fine. Allie, I know your whining is probably annoying, but these people have been after us for a long time. We're worried. I know you are. We all are, but it's gonna be okay. I'm sure of it. Hope you're right. The others had been largely silent through the conversation, but I guess there wasn't much to add anyway. It seemed like we had a plan, or the start of one anyway. What about the fairy ring? Well, Shelly and I found a way to get rid of it without rousing the Fae, but it requires a new moon, and the next one is until Thursday. Great. What about our little brownie friend? That thing is not my friend. All these wards and banes won't hurt it, right? Nothing we're planning will actually harm it, and besides, it's only for a few days. One hopes. One does. I do have a question. What's up? Well, everything you guys are talking about, not that I pretend to understand it at all, is just prevention. What happens if we need to actively defend ourselves? I'm hoping it doesn't come to that. And if it does? Nora, do you still have the bell I gave you? I've been, I pulled it out of my coat pocket. Call me paranoid, but I've been carrying it around with me. Ewan smiled slightly when I held out my hand with the little bell. He closed my hand around it. Good. Keep it with you at all times. Fairies hate iron, especially those that are less used to living in human society. It doesn't bother me much, but with the ones we're dealing with here, it will definitely scatter them, keep them at bay. Tiny bell is actually going to be useful? There are stories out of entire fairy hosts being scattered by someone tossing a small piece of iron in their midst. They hate the stuff. What did you expect? We take you out back and have you pull a magic sword out of a rock? I have to be honest here. When I called everyone today, I was really disappointed no one jumped up and told me they'd lend me their axe or bow or... I'm not picky. Cute. I've heard I am. I'm not really hoping for a legendary sword here. It's just hard to trust bells and weeds to offer much protection. I could try to teach Nora some magic. I wanted to anyway. But I don't think either of you wants to get in a magic squabble with a pureblood fairy or the Unseelie Court. You'd be surprised what kinds of objects have power against fey creatures, Spencer. They're pretty ancient magics that wind themselves into natural objects. Plants, stones, and minerals absorb the magic energy from the earth. It steeps inside them and gets altered in strange ways. Ways that don't always mesh well with fairy magic. So don't underestimate the tools we're giving you. Besides, we'll be keeping an eye on things too, and if anything happens, you are to let me know right away. Right away. Believe me, I will. Anyway, we've talked enough. Let's get started before your parents get back. They started working to set things up, but there wasn't that much for Spencer and I to do, really. Allie and Shelly were handling most of the preparations. Ewan helped a little as well, but wards weren't exactly something Spencer and I could help with. We just sat at the kitchen table, kind of talking it all and taking it all in and wondering how we'd manage to go from normal teens to having some kind of epic battle with the Unseelie Court. Though it was really more of a standoff than a battle, which was for the best, really. It sounded like we'd get completely trounced in a battle. The whole thing was a little unnerving. Spencer reeled I was actually looking more relaxed than it had been at first. Still scared, of course, but it looked like he was adapting to the weird. It was evening by the time everything was finished. Apparently some of Valley's barriers were intensive enough to take some time to set up. When she and Shelley left, it was within a very firm order to call her the instant anything happened. At all. It was finally down to just me, Ewan, and Spencer again. I walked Ewan to the foyer as he prepared to leave. I'll be staying at Elliot's tonight, so I'll be nearby, okay? I smirked at him. You're just gonna stay there until Samhain passes. If I have to. I don't want to leave you guys to deal with this alone. I mean, you need someone capable of sticking around to help out. I kicked his foot. More capable. I mean, sort of. I'm capable of wrestling you to the ground and putting you in a headlock if I have to. Oh no. Unseelie Court, beware. He laughed, but the laughter quickly faded, and he stared down at me seriously. If you need anything, just call. I'm not kidding. I want to know if anything happens. I will. I hope nothing does. I just want this finished. I want to give up and go away. I'm sure they will soon enough. They have better things to do than perpetually stalk some shorty that got away. So help me, if you don't stop harping on my height, I'm going to get a baseball bat and knock that head of yours down a rabbit hole. Your sets are getting more and more creative as the days go by. In about 5 seconds, it's going to be reality, not a threat. Hate to interrupt your weird flirting, but Mom and Dad are probably going to be back soon, so you might want to get your boyfriend out of the house. At the very least, if you're going to murder him, just do it outside. I'm not up for cleaning some weird mess in here. I prefer not to be murdered at all, thank you very much, though I'll admit seeing you try would be pretty entertaining. Out. Now, before I really try it. He smirked and stepped outside, but stopped on the porch. Do you need anything before I go? A hug? Well, there is one thing. What's that? For you to stay safe too. You've gotten all caught up in our problem, and I don't want anything to happen to you because of it. Ewan leaned down and gave me a swift, tight hug. There we go. I'll be fine. Just worry about yourself. He was a little red when he released me and quickly went down the steps. He waved once before he disappeared into Elliot's yard. Your taste in guys is definitely weirder than I expected. Shut up. I punched him in the arm before I fled back inside. We shut the door behind you and Spencer's phone rang almost immediately. He quickly answered. Hello? Oh, hey, Mom. Yeah. We're just hanging out. Okay. Yeah, not a problem. Sure. Have fun. He hung up frowning. What's that about? They decided to go see a movie, so they won't be back for another few hours. Well, it's probably for the best, really. I guess. After a pause, we sort of meandered silently to the kitchen. There wasn't much to do now, but wait. Daylight had all but faded, and the darkness outside was more than a little unnerving. I need a hot chocolate. You want some? Spencer said nothing, but I went to set the kettle on anyway. Today's been weird. Tell me about it. I mean, on one hand, I know it's all real. I know magic is a thing, fairies, and all of it, but I thought I'd accepted it. But then today happened, and I was seeing it all in action, and I don't know. Feels a little surreal, right? More than a little, actually. I know the feeling, believe me. I got out 2 mugs and set them on the counter as I hunted down the cocoa. You were dealing with all this alone since we got back, weren't you? Sure I didn't make it any easier. You didn't. You were going through a lot as well, and I'm sure I didn't make that easier for you. Yeah, but you were trying. The only thing I was trying to do was make things more difficult. I feel like a jerk. I glanced back at him, sighing. He'd been doing this for 2 days already, kicking himself over and over from how he'd been acting. Look, you didn't do anything wrong, Spencer. You were just reacting to the situation, or the only reasonable way you could have interpreted the situation. I think that, as much as it was hurtful at times, and as much as it made me furious, so furious at times, the way you acted was reasonable for what you thought was happening, and I don't know you could have been expected to interpret things differently. Based on what you saw, there weren't many conclusions you could have made. I definitely don't think you could have assumed your sister was trapped in a fairy's body and needed help. I feel like I should have had more faith in you. But you did, I mean, sort of. You didn't just assume your sister was evil, right? You assumed I was somewhere and needed help, and that there was an imposter in the house. And you weren't totally wrong, you just didn't know how to help. I don't blame you for that. On the contrary, I don't know. I wish I'd made Allie say something to you sooner rather than keeping this secret from you. I feel like that would have solved a lot of issues. I feel like me keeping things from you just didn't help. I've been trying to work out when this really all got started. It probably wasn't the incident 5 years ago, was it? I mean, that wasn't even the first time you vanished. I know, I've been racking my brain about that too. You and I talked about it as well. It was definitely sometime before I turned 9, and... Remember how you told me that you've been dreaming about the past? That you felt like you were forgetting something? I feel the same way. When I was talking to him about it, I remember that little hill behind our old house. We used to pretend it was a castle or whatever. That's what I've been dreaming about, that place. Well, I'm not sure those are just dreams. So we've been dreaming about that fairy hill. What happens in your dreams? I felt that little drop of pain behind my eyes again, but I wanted to forge on. I felt very strongly like we needed to know what really happened back then. Especially if it's something the Fae didn't want us to know. Well, I dreamed that it's night, and I'm wandering in the house, but when I go outside, there are these glowing lights everywhere, just drifting around the yard, so I go outside to look at them. And then they're singing, the same singing we used to hear in the woods when we were kids. At first, I think the lights are fireflies, but they're too big. And then they beckon me into the woods, so I follow. They lead me deep into the trees, to the hill. But it's not like it normally is. The hill is lifted up on pillars, and underneath it is a cave full of light, so I go inside. Goosebumps rose on my arms when he said that. There was an ominous sense of familiarity when he said that. I somehow didn't want to hear more of his dream, but he kept going. Under the hill is another forest. It is strange, warmer and full of colorful lights, and people, so many people. When I try to leave, they won't let me go. They say I have to stay, and I don't want to stay. And I don't want. His voice rose, and he was speaking faster and frantically. I reached across the table and took his hand, squeezing. You don't have to stay with them. He stopped and looked at me, eyes wide, because I winced as my head started throbbing. I went in after you. Is that real? I think so. I struggled to remember the details. It was like clawing through mud to pull any of them to the surface. And then it hit me, all of it, like lightning. The force of all the memories flooding back left me gripping the table, gasping for air. You were missing. I remember it now. You disappeared for days, and everyone's out looking for you. I went missing? Yes, I remember now. That was what Kara had been talking about back then. I was with Grandma, and then the grown-ups were looking for you, but they wouldn't let me go, so I sneaked away from her. I remember running through the woods, calling for you. I ended up there, and I could hear you inside, crying, but they wouldn't let me in at first. And then you agreed to take my place. Just like in the dream. Chill ran through me. That's it. I remember now. That white-haired woman, I made a promise with her. How could we have forgotten this? Because someone made us forget. Mom and Dad too? I don't know. They never mentioned this at all. They didn't mention it when you disappeared either. Surely they would have... If you have two kids who vanish into the woods and come back totally forgotten what happened, then as a parent you might play along to avoid bringing back any traumatic memories, I guess. Even after you went missing 2 more times? Maybe. He stood up suddenly, heading for the living room. I followed him into the foyer. What are you doing? Mom kept clippings when you disappeared. Both times. If I vanished for any length of time, there's definitely some evidence somewhere. Disappeared in the living room and came back with several scrapbooks and albums. The two of us sat at the table, pouring through them. They weren't books we usually looked at. They were full of mementos and embarrassing photos, and Mom meticulously recorded everything that happened to us as kids. From the time Spencer made a daring escape down the neighborhood street, completely naked, to the time I dressed him up in my princess clothes and tied him up in our old treehouse to be rescued. We were silent for quite a while before Spencer finally let out a small noise of triumph. Found something! There. In the album he had opened, there was a tiny gray corner of paper poking out of the back cover. It looked like 2 of the pages had been taped together to create a sort of pocket. Spencer gently separated the pages, taking care not to rip them. As we unfolded the pages, we realized it definitely wasn't just one newspaper cutting. There were several ones, photographs as well. It says, "This is it." The headlines all mentioned a missing boy, gone for 3 days, found by his twin sister. I'd completely forgotten he disappeared like that. 3 times. What? I was just thinking that it was 3 times that a kid from this house went missing and turned up again with amnesia. No wonder the media went so crazy. Twice would have been weird, but considering what had happened before, it also makes sense why Mom and Dad were so eager to get out of here, and were so nervous about coming back. Spencer stared out at the cuttings, biting his lip. This is all my fault. All of it. Hey, you agreed to take my place. You agreed to be a changeling without even knowing what it meant to save me. And I was so hateful to you all this time, even though I was the one to blame. I gave Spencer a solid smack on the back of the head. Nora! Stop it. Stop trying to find someone to blame here. We were 7. When a 7-year-old makes smart decisions, you were being manipulated by the Fae, then just as you have been this whole time. No one could expect a 7-year-old to fight back against that. You're not to blame here. It's them. It's that stupid white-haired taking advantage of children. Fays are horrible. Spencer hesitated, then to my surprise, pulled me into a hug. I sat there stiffly for a few seconds before I realized what was happening. Then I wrapped my arms against his shaking shoulders and squeezed him gently. So sorry. So sorry. Oh, he's crying. Come on. I thought you grew out of this crybaby stuff. He just sobbed harder as I rested my cheek against his head. The stupid fairies. I was having a fight the urge to storm my way to that fairy hill and tear it down with my bare hands. Hurting Spencer was not something I'd forgive. Ever. We sat like that for a long time, until his sobs finally subsided and he pulled away, rubbing at his eyes awkwardly. I reached up and squished his cheeks together gently. You feel better? No. I cracked up at the sight of his smushed up mouth. You look terrible. He shoved my hands away, glaring as he wiped his eyes. Shut up. I think we should call Allie and tell her what we found. Then again, Allie might already know about it. We'd known her entire lives. If Spencer went missing, she'd surely have known. Confirming it with her might give us more insights into why Mom and Dad hid it. I'm gonna grab my phone and call for her, okay? Spencer nodded, pulling the scrapbook over to him. I'll be back in a minute. I hurried upstairs, leaving Spencer in the kitchen alone. My original suspicion had actually proven correct. It wasn't the fairy's original target. Spencer was. I'd been the replacement. Spencer hadn't spent long under that hill, just a few days, but I wondered if that was the source of his faint traces of fairy magic. It might also be why they manipulate him so easily now, and maybe even why he kept the ability to see fairies past his childhood. It wasn't until that stupid white-haired woman took the vision in his eye that he'd seemed to lose that. Wait. A white-haired woman with horns? Why hadn't I thought of this earlier? I forgot Allie for the moment and ran to my closet, tearing through my things to get some of my old artwork. I pulled out the old canvas board and stared down at the blue eyes peering up at me from it. A white-haired woman with horns. icy blue eyes, a penetrating stare. A woman I'd dreamed about for years. I painted her so many times. I thought for a long time, I thought she was just sort of character I concocted, or an imaginary friend, or even some kind of symbolic mental image of myself. But no, this was her. This is the one whose body I'd been in, the one who had hurt Spencer's eye, the one who'd taken me away. I felt a decidedly unhealthy level of rage when I looked down at her, and the urge to burn every single one of the artworks of her. This bitch. My hands tightened around the edges of the painting, and I flung it to the floor, going to get my phone. I needed to calm down a little. I sat on my bed and sent a flurry of texts to Allie explaining what we'd found. There was a long delay before she called back. I haven't thought about that in years, but yes, I do remember. I hadn't made the connection, to be honest, but you're right. I was told to never mention it to you guys. So Spencer went inside that hill. If you followed him and set up the contract? Yeah. The hill went dormant right after that. Looks like they want you both back now. The fact that Spencer was in their hill, in their control, could be why they still have a hold of him. I thought that too. You spent years there, but they only had your body, never your soul. Not true for him. Keep a very, very close eye on him, and don't leave him alone. Will their control not be hampered by wards? Not necessarily. Got it. Is he not going to be back? He's not going to be downstairs when I go back downstairs. I shoved my phone in my pocket and started downstairs. I was halfway down the hall and I heard something. Something that sounded suspiciously like the back door opening. Oh, no, no, no! There was no way this was happening. Right after Allie warned me. That would be way too stupid. I ran down the hall and stairs to an empty kitchen and back door swinging wide open. Spencer! I flew outside, nearly tumbling off the back porch. I saw him for a split second just before he stepped into the fairy ring and he's gone. Oh, I'm going. I didn't stop running. Skidding on the grass as I made an awkward leap with only one thought in my mind. I have to get him back. I landed straight in the center of the fairy ring. The real world peeled away and it felt like I was sucked downward, falling straight into the darkness like Alice going down the rabbit hole. I felt dizzy and sick and quickly lost my sense of up and down until I crashed painfully into a pile of rotting leaves in a really weird forest. Spencer was beside me, huddled in a ball. He looked at me with a blank expression. Spencer! I reached for him, but something grabbed me and pulled me away. Fierce, spindly fingers with strength I couldn't fight against. I was flung away from Spencer onto the hard ground. I stared breathlessly up at the pale, frighteningly familiar face. My mouth went dry. You followed him blindly, just like you did before. That was far easier than I expected. You. I realized then that there were other voices around us, many of them. I scrambled up towards Spencer, clutching him protectively as a white-haired fae closed in on us. Stupid. Stupid. Fallen right into their hands again. Welcome home, little changeling. This time neither of you will be leaving us again, so I hope you're prepared to enjoy your stay. Spencer was trembling violently as she approached us, and all I could do was hold him tightly. Because this time, I didn't think anyone would be coming to take our place. The end. Well. Not quite the ending I was hoping for. That's too bad. I did not expect that to happen. That's too bad. That's even actually relatively anticlimactic. So these are the 6 characters, huh? Welcome home, Changeling. The ending that I earned. Wow, there's a lot of different endings for Ewan. So yeah, there's what, 8 there, 5, and 6. That's what, 19. And 13 is 32. 37. 10 is 40, so there's 48 different endings, huh? Wow. Well, I guess what could have happened... Oh, here's the album. Oh, it's just like different, different scenes or something, right? Well, certainly not the ending I was expecting to get. Wow.